Well, I would like to join Sherry in welcoming you to this last module of our Psychonaut Marathon. And I am ready for your questions.
Okay, and our first question comes from Bonnie, and Bonnie asks, I would like to create a transpersonal center that functions as a library and workshop hub. I've been wondering whether it's necessary for me to pursue a higher degree, such as the master's program at CIIS on philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness. I currently have a bachelor's in English. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it depends on what your function would be. If you would be just running the center as an organizer, you don't need any more education in transpersonal psychology. You would probably be educated, but just operating in that environment and getting all the influences there. But I think it's always great to bring in what transpersonal psychology has to offer, because it's not good just professionally, but it can simply enhance our life, the way we live in everyday life, the way we function. So I think it's not necessary, but I think it would be wonderful if you continue your education.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks so much, Stan. Our next question comes from Ragnar. And Ragnar asks, regarding the status and the future paradigm of the legal use of psychedelic drugs, it looks like the accredited practitioner will get the role to provide recognized legal use of psychedelic drugs. What will the role of psychiatry be in the near future? Will religion and spirituality be provided by and subordinate to the practice of psychiatry? What will be the effect on the legality and social status of an experience with the support of a competent, informally educated, insightful person, or in the context of cultural rites of passage? It looks to me like the new paradigm will be based on commerce and a formal university education. In the 12-step groups, there is a non-commercial trust-based relationship between the uninitiated and group elder. Also, there are uneducated shamans, etc. Will grassroots work be possible in the new paradigm?
Well, we have the same kind of situation actually in the holotropic breathwork, which is already happening, where our attitude to it was that if you take the training in holotropic breathwork, you get certain skills, and you would be able to do, let's say, groups, like weekend groups with people. But if you would like to use it for therapy, then you have to have a license, for the kind of country or the area where you are practicing. So the use of psychedelics is extremely broad. It covers a very broad range. They have been used for spiritual purposes, just as part of ritual, spiritual activities. It has been used for healing purposes. It has been used for artistic inspiration. We have used psychedelics for training of professionals in various areas. So, all those uses are possible. Now, what is going to happen will depend on the political situation. I could tell you what I think should be happening. I would like to see a system of centers where people who would like to have these experiences could go and experience, with pure substances and with guidance. And then, the psychiatric use would be separate from that. I would not sort of mix those things together. As you mentioned, there are shamans, even shamans from illiterate cultures, and they do an incredible job guiding people. And this has been happening for centuries, long before any universities existed. And unfortunately, the way it is now, the education in traditional psychiatry and psychology is not very useful. It actually have to unlearn a lot of things because we have a paradigm that really does not function well in connection with non-ordinary states of consciousness, because it tends to see all non-ordinary states of consciousness as being pathological, something that we stop. And the current paradigm makes it difficult for professionals to embrace psychedelics as a useful tool, because the healing happens through experiences that the mainstream psychiatry would consider pathological. People have, some of the experiences that we talked about, psychospiritual death and rebirth, all kinds of transpersonal experiences, past life experiences, archetypal experiences, and it's not part of the cartography. Now, if psychiatry would expand, then it's conceivable, that they would play a useful role. But at the present, unfortunately, the old type of thinking is more of an obstacle. Does it answer your question?
So Stan, let me just take a look to see if Ragnar has replied. And in the meantime, okay, so Ragnar says almost.
Maybe add one thing. I can see a situation where you would have on the one side psychedelics used for therapy by psychiatrists and psychologists, but I can also see spiritual religious groups using it for spiritual purposes, and both those form of using psychedelic would be extremely useful.
And Ragnar also added, some of the healing will remain illegal. Do you have anything to add on that, Stan?
Well, we have a situation with alcohol. Alcohol can be used, but you should not be drinking. If you drink and drive, then you can be punished. It becomes a criminal act. So I think we should also have some rules as to what are safe ways of using psychedelics, both for the people who are taking them and also for their environment, other people. So people have not been using psychedelics very wisely. I remember when I was in the Esalen Institute, there was a man who came to one of our workshops, and he was a truck driver who was taking, heavy loads across the country. And he said that it's boring because, all the highways are very straight. So he was taking, 300 micrograms of LSD and driving a heavy vehicle. So, no matter how lenient we are with the legal control of psychedelics, this would be activities that still would be forbidden and punishable, of course.
Okay, thank you, Stan. We now have Lucia. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Lucia. Your microphone is open. Welcome.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Zia. Yes, I can.
Hi. We once talked about the training, and now I've started it with the workshop with Pav and Debbie and Holly in Czech Republic, in Svatá Kateřina in April. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is...
Wonderful facilitators, yeah.
Yeah, it was really a really very good group. I think the best trainers of the world, almost. My question is about establishing the holotropic research and transpersonal psychology in the academic field. How do you see the chances, therefore, to get it into universities?
To get it into what?
Universities. So to say, in the scientific world. And also the holotropic breathwork.
So far, we had situation where people whom we certified, they with dissertations and certain studies. In the book Holotropic Breathwork, there are several pages where you can find the studies that have already been done, and hopefully there will be more of it. But there's the same difficulty as with psychedelics, that it requires a very different understanding of the psyche. You have to have a much bigger cartography of the psyche. You have to vastly expand the current model, which is limited to postnatal biography and the Freudian individual unconscious. And as you know, the kind of experiences we work with, they include reliving of birth, reliving of some prenatal episodes, and also a wide range of these transpersonal experiences that currently are not seen as kind of germane, normal part of the human psyche. They are usually attributed to some pathology if they occur spontaneously. So we really have a lot of work to do in changing the paradigm.
Yes, I see. And what about establishing the holotropic breathwork as a method of psychotherapy that can be also accessible for patients on the cost of the insurance?
It's a very powerful therapeutic tool. But then again, to use it, you would have to have more than the training in holotropic breathwork. You would have to have a license as a therapist that is required in the area where you are.
I'm licensed therapist. I'm already a licensed psychotherapist for 20 years.
Okay, then you would have two problems. One is that you would have to have some kind of an office or area where you can allow the clients to make noises, and you would be playing loud music, so that in many offices this is not possible. And the other thing is, are you working individually or are you part of a team? If you're part of a team, then you would also depend on the reactions of your colleagues, and particularly your boss, whether they approve of this kind of unconventional treatment or not.
Now, in the single practice, it would not be possible, but I know some places where I could perform it in a group of 10 to 20 people.
And there are some facilities, a few of them where this is practiced actually, when people can have the conditions for doing breathwork therapeutically.
One is in Austria, in the Gies Castle. You know it. You had been there in December last year. This is one of the places, and I know some other where it would be possible.
Let's hope that there'll be more openness in the academic circles. That I was trying to communicate in this telecourse is I don't think that the kind of tools that we have now, which is symptomatic treatment, suppression of symptoms, and talking therapy, will get us very far. It makes it impossible to really deeply understand what emotional and psychosomatic disorders are, because they have deeper roots outside of the current model on the perinatal level and on the transpersonal level. And also to effectively treat these emotional and psychosomatic disorders, you have to have some kind of method that can reach the roots. And it's not going to be talking. You will not be able to talk out first. You will not be able to deal with things that happened in the pre-verbal stage. You certainly will be,
I'm working with hypnosis and guided imagery. Those are my methods.
Well, these things take time, so we just have to be patient and do the best we can.
Okay.
and hope that the situation will change.
Yeah, so maybe we see on the conference in Prague. We can continue talking about this.
Okay, super. Thank you, Lucia. Thanks so much, and thanks for coming on live. And let's go next to a written question from Christopher Michael. And Christopher Michael asks, has there been any research into mixing holotropic states together, like a holotropic breathwork session with psychedelic session? If so, would there be further benefits?
Well, the only experience I had was actually, and I described it when I talked about how holotropic breathwork originated. So the experience I had was in the early work in Prague, where we were using LSD, psilocybin, and some other psychedelics. When the session the drug didn't resolve something, there was some kind of a leftover, then you know, I started using some breathing and the body work. But it was only when the substance itself did not reach adequate completion of the session. You know, otherwise, if you have psychedelics, if you want to go deeper, you just increase the dosage. So I would use the breathwork only as a complement to psychedelics rather than mixing it from the beginning.
Okay, thank you, Stan. And I see Dane looks ready. Hi, Dane, welcome. Your line is open.
Hi. Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Stan. Thanks for everything you do. And you.
Oh, we've lost you, Dane. We're not getting you very clearly. One thing you can do, it might be your internet connection. If you just try turning off your video for a moment and see if we can get you back. And if not, then we'll go on to someone else here. Oh.
Can you hear me, Stan?
Now we can. Could you turn off your video, Dane, just so we don't lose you again? We'll get you on audio.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So to put my question in context, Stan, are you familiar with the transhumanist movement and specifically the work of Ray Kurzweil?
No, I am not.
Transhumanism, it's centered around the idea of the coming technological singularity. Ray Kurzweil is an author who's written a number of books. One of them is called The Singularity is Near. He wrote one called The Age of Intelligent Machines, and another one called The Age of Spiritual Machines, about when computers exceed human intelligence. And the idea is that the exponential advancement of technology leads to the end of the human age, where machines and computers are more intelligent than humans are, and this is considered to be the end of the human era, hence the name the transhumanist movement. And I was curious if you have any insights about how transpersonal psychology, or what insights transpersonal psychology might lend to the idea of intelligent or spiritual machines, or AI waking up and becoming conscious. And then I'm also just really curious, do people ever lose control of their bladder or bowels during holotropic sessions, and are there any precautions that need to be taken for that?
So two very different questions. Yeah.
Very different. Yeah.
It's very interesting to hear that name, because this transhumanistic was the original name that Tony Sutich and Abe Maslow wanted to give to this new psychology before we started calling it transpersonal. So I'm not aware of this, of the work that you're talking about, but I know that this danger of computers has been discussed on very high levels, including Bill Gates and people in that category are really concerned about where the development is going, that, you know, the computers might be able to actually generate intelligence that supersedes by far the human, to the point that it would be a danger to the human species. So this has been discussed, certainly not necessarily from the psychological perspective, but from simply the technological perspective. I was once present, you know, John Lilly. John Lilly was a researcher who worked with dolphins, very much about the dolphin intelligence, and was interested in whales and their intelligence and so on. And I was present in one of his sessions with ketamine, Ketalar, and he had this experience of silicon intelligence taking over the world, where you have the carbon life needs water above everything, and the greatest danger for the silicon intelligence is water. So he saw the world where the computers would be cutting off supplies of water because it's such a danger for the silicon intelligence. And you know, this was like probably 30 years ago, but now it's really discussed seriously by computer experts.
So does
I don't, you know, if you work with holotropic states of consciousness, you will find that some form of consciousness is present even in inorganic matter, and a lot of the quantum relativistic physicists are talking about it. So I don't see that kind of a dichotomy, you know, between consciousness and the world of matter.
Thank you. That is very insightful.
You know, people have had experiences, including myself, of becoming a consciousness of granite, for example, consciousness of the diamond. Some very, very convincing, very real experiences. Consciousness of amber and so on.
And that actually, that is very helpful about question number one. How about question number two?
This happens, you know, very, very rarely, but actually it is something that can be included in therapy. There are people who have major problems with urination, like when they have problems with bedwetting as children and so on, and they have experienced all kinds of shameful situations when they had accidents at school and so on, and they carry it as a major trauma. And when you work with psychedelics, or you work with the holotropic breathwork, when that issue emerges, it creates a kind of an urge to get up and go to the bathroom, and it interrupts the process. And very frequently, it's not really necessary to go to the bathroom. It's just an urge that seems like you should. And so we have actually recommended people to wear some surgical pants if they have this kind of problem, and not to worry about it, and just let the experience run. And you know, sometimes it doesn't happen, sometimes it happens. It's not a big deal. They can take care of it, and it's a major resolution of those kinds of problems. For example, I have worked with some women who could not have an orgasm because they were afraid if they let go in a sexual situation, they would urinate. And when they use this kind of procedure that I'm talking about, then this urination is completely separated from the ability to let go sexually, and it just really changed their life. So it's seldom that it happens, that it just takes over, but it has happened, you know, in a controlled way as part of the therapeutic procedure.
Thank you. I also, she's watching. I also want to tell Kristen if she's watching that I love you. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you so much. Let's go next to a written question from Inika. And Inika asks, can we do breath work for a possession client? A client with a black magic case. Inika from Jakarta, Indonesia. As you know, in Indonesia, it's common with people with that mindset.
You know, it's really interesting that it is not limited to some exotic cultures, that we see it quite frequently in our clients and in participants in the workshop, when there is a situation where there could be a lot of problems of various kinds, and then sooner or later people become aware that they carry some kind of a dark energy, and they have a sense that it's personified. And in breathwork or in psychedelic sessions, this can really fully manifest, and the session can look like exorcism. I actually wrote a book, When the Impossible Happens, where I describe a situation where a patient who had very complicated history with in a penitentiary, and then coming from the penitentiary, she became a drug addict. She had suicidal tendencies, depressions. She had kind of a very painful tick in the cheek and so on. And in the middle of the session, this spasm sort of increased, and she was very strange, kind of evil look in her eyes, and then very deep voice started coming, and she really started talking for the devil. And this was a very dramatic situation that lasted a couple of hours, but ended up in major, actually, religious conversion, and some of the best therapeutic results that I have ever experienced. I don't have time here to talk about the details, but if you're specifically interested in, it's a chapter in the book, When the Impossible Happens, and it's called Interview with the Devil. And I think I actually gave you the case history. It was the case of Flora. There were the two patients that were used as examples of the use of archetypal astrology, Karen and Flora. Flora was this patient who had this kind of a manifestation of demonic energy in the middle of the session. Do you have any specific questions about it?
So let me just check if Inika has sent anything else. Okay, yes, here she has added, in Indonesia, it's commonly possible that people believe in God. Trust with God has become a tradition, but my understanding is that the soul is bound by the law of consciousness because it is tied to the trauma that comes from the matrix that you teach, prenatal, biographical, karmic chain, past regression, etc. With a holistic therapy such as yoga, meditation, Sufi, Vedanta, breathwork, bodywork, and breathwork session, and counseling sessions, those are very helpful to clients for the client, for his soul to integrate with the divine consciousness. What do you think, Dr. Stan?
Okay, well, the way we work with it is when we become aware that energy is there, and also the person, the participant in the breathwork becomes aware, then we create a situation where we actually encourage the person to fully express in like a facial expression, grimaces, in the sound, in positions of the hands, sometimes like contractions and so on, really fully express that energy. And this is an extremely liberating experience. The important thing is that the facilitators feel comfortable with it. There's a great tendency to put some kind of a moral judgment on it. The people who start showing these kinds of manifestations, they are frequently rejected by the group, and the therapists do not want to work with that kind of energy. And in my experience, it doesn't really mean that the person is bad. It actually is the reflection of suffering that they experience. This usually what's behind this kind of a dark energy is a situation where the person suffered very much and actually came close to death, like in a birth when they almost died, or people who were really brutally abused in childhood. When they go through the healing process, they have to somehow deal with this dark energy, and it's just a archetypal form of energy, like all the other forms. So the important thing is not to have any kind of a moral judgment about it, and reject those people, judge them, and so on. Just create a situation where they can release that energy and experience liberation from it.
Okay, thanks so much, Stan. We have so many questions coming in, and we'll go next to a live question with Dr. O. Dr. O, welcome.
Hi, Stan.
Hi.
I don't know if you remember me. I came to 2 Kripalu sessions with 2 other African-American women, and then a year later with 1 woman named Maria. So I have a statement and a question.
Okay.
My statement is, thank you very much for this course. Over 6 months, not only did I learn tremendously, but it catapulted me into my own second spiritual emergency in my life. I missed a few of the classes recently because of that. I thought I was on my way to Canada to a new life with new husband, and the Canadian Border Patrol had different ideas and were very traumatizing. So I was able to follow that and see that it was a huge piece of my own history, particularly sexual abuse as a child, that had to be worked through. What I'm asking as a question now, as I integrate all of this, I've landed synchronistically on a farm in a rural area of the Pacific Northwest. As I follow the flow of my life, it looks like I'm going to be here for a couple of years by choice, rather than continuing on to Canada. And I'm wanting to know what you suggest for most fully integrating an experience such as I just had.
Well, there are all kinds of things that you can do to help the integration. We wrote the book, The Holotropic Breathwork, when we have a chapter that describes all kinds of complementary methods that you can use, whether the experiences happened spontaneously, like what you are describing, or whether they were a result of a psychedelic session or holotropic breathwork session and so on. So there are all kinds of things that you can do, but the general idea is you want to continue the uncovering, what's called the uncovering work. Keep the emotions, keep the physical energies flowing out. You don't want to stop it. You don't want to suppress it. So we can do anything from, let's say, turning on the music and dancing the energy out, working with your dreams, drawing mandalas could be very useful. Some other experiential methods like Gestalt therapy or EMDR. There are quite a few of these methods, or you do holotropic breath work. Many of these things sometimes if a lot of blocked energy is involved, acupuncture can be good, good complement to this process. There's something called family constellation. There is psychodrama. You see, those are all different methods that could help you to express the emotions which are still available close to the surface, and release the pent-up energies, and help to ground it and integrate it.
I will use most of
Meditation, meditation, of course, you know, is a great way to spend some time where you really pay attention and go inside and see what is happening, and allow the emotion to surface.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. O, for coming on live. We appreciate it. Okay, so let's go to our next question from Adriana. Adriana asks, she starts by saying, this course has been brilliant for me as a follower of you, Stan, since the 1990s. However, I have been triggered into a spiritual emergency in the moment of now, around the third stage of perinatal matrix. I am in New Zealand, which is far from any holotropic breathwork session. So what could you suggest I could do to move further through this, as I am in excessive pain and feel triggered to quit this life to escape the pain? It is a lifetime pattern. The trauma is desperate to be released, and I am more than ready, but not sure what to do.
How did this happen? How did it start?
So Adriana, if you would be willing to come on live, that would be fantastic. If not, then if you could reply to Stan through the Q&A, that would be fantastic as well. We'll just...
Would you tell me how it was triggered? What was the...
Okay, and Stan, Adriana is coming on live here. She'll be with us in just a moment. There she is. Okay,
Hello.
Adriana, your line is open. Welcome.
Oh, well, hello. I'm afraid can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. It's been a lifelong pattern because I had a rebirthing experience about 30 years ago. I'm an old lady now, old in body, but far from old in every other way. And in the experience, I experienced myself in my mother's womb before birth, and me as the baby said, I'm afraid to be born because I'm not going to be big enough to do what I'm coming to do. So I knew in that moment after that that was the sabotage that really controlled so much of my life. I've had a wonderful life and done a lot of wonderful things, but I've always get to a place where I'm stuck. And so in just because of the course and all the work on the birth, I found myself the other day back in the birth canal, and I can feel, I can hardly talk about it really. I can feel my head jammed. I can feel the terror. I just don't want to be born because I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it right. I'm not going to be able to do what I'm coming to do. And I've had spontaneous experiences all of my life, spontaneous, vivid, wonderful, marvelous, ever since I was born, really. So I've had the two sides of being so expanded and so sensitive, and at the same time, I suppose, holding back, not really grounding myself in the body for fear of not being able to, work that out.
Okay, well, I think, the first important rule and principle is that if you have problems, it's never because you experience too much. It's because something remained unfinished, incomplete. Some of the memories, heavily charged, are very close to the surface, and they interfere with your functioning. So it's really important.
That's right. That is right. I can feel all of that. I can feel all of that, but I can't break through.
you see, you are already here. So when you talk about not wanting to be born, you are talking about a situation that is way back. You said you are an older lady, so it's probably quite a few years back. So it has already happened. I mean, you're here. So now the question is whether you are going to be suffering by carrying this this memory, or whether you do something with it to get rid of it. Now there are people in New Zealand, but there is, you know, Tasmania is not that far, and the Grove Transpersonal Training is doing modules. There are 6-day workshops, usually 2 of them back to back. So you would have like 2 weeks to really do some significant inner work. And I think it would be worth it to go to Tasmania if we don't find anybody closer. I know there are also people in New Zealand. I can't give you names right now, but I could, if you write to me, I can find that for you.
Yes, I would appreciate that, because I've tried to find myself. And
Or
have
you
not.
can, I suggest that you write to holotropic.com, and there's Terry Sparks is the director of the training, and she has the list of the facilitators. She will tell you whether there are some people in New Zealand who feel comfortable and are able to support people in this kind of process. You know, the usual approach is that trying to stop this with tranquilizers, but you really need somebody who would support you and help you to complete that process.
Oh yes, I'm not a believer in tranquilizers in the least, or I wouldn't be where I am. You know, following your kind of work. So thank you. That's helpful. But I do have to do it as fast as possible, because the pain is so excruciating. It's and it just does sound ridiculous that was a long time ago, and yet it must be so terrifying that I haven't been able to release it.
Yeah, it's difficult to do it by yourself. You know, you really need support. You know, some people who also are able to do body work if it's appropriate.
Yes.
And so what you need, somebody to help you to complete this experience of being born,
yes.
Even if you do it unwillingly and reluctantly. I think your life will be much better if you do that.
Yes, well, I can't continue the way I am. I'm almost paralyzed with pain. So thank you very much, Doctor. And the course has been marvelous, and it's triggered me to the next stage, obviously.
Okay, so holotropic.com, and they will give you the address. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Stan. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you, Adriana. Okay, let's go next to, it looks like Dawn. Welcome, Dawn. You're live.
Thank you. Dr. Grove, I met you at Science and Non-Duality about 3 years ago. Can you hear me?
It was in San Jose?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And loved your presentation. And I'm really fascinated with where quantum physics and quantum thought coming out of dark matter and dark energy are integrating with your work, and how that is changing the scope of what you're doing as we have more knowledge of that, and what you see in the future and what you have seen in your experience as quantum physics has become more part of our everyday thought. What have you seen, and how are you using that, if at all?
Well, you see, from the very beginning, I was reaching for modern physics, for quantum relativistic physics. It started, and I described it in one of the modules, which were about transpersonal psychology and science, where we formulated this new psychology, the transpersonal psychology, and we didn't know how to bridge it to what we knew to be science, which is the Cartesian Newtonian, monistic materialistic science. And I described how important it was for me to meet Fritjof Capra and read the book, The Tao of Physics, where he showed that since the turn of the century, since the discovery of radioactivity and X-ray, that science, that physics really changed radically, moving towards the theory of relativity and then to quantum physics. And the other disciplines that initially in the 17th century modeled themselves after Newtonian physics, they didn't catch up with this development. So in biology, in medicine, in psychiatry, psychology, we are still in 17th century. And so what is now happening that actually quantum relativistic physicists are ahead of the understanding of consciousness, for example, role of consciousness, you know, far ahead of psychiatrists. So there is an interface which is fascinating. I just, maybe a month ago, I had a wonderful interview with Amit Goswami, who is an emeritus professor of the University of Oregon. And he's a quantum physicist who very much interested in consciousness. He talks about science of consciousness. So if you don't know his books, it's really a wonderful, wonderful source. I think again, in one of the, what we call the deepening learning, I think I gave you about 3 of his books, the titles, and also another very important book by Erwin Laszlo, L-A-S-Z-L-O, which is called What is Reality? It brings, you know, most advanced science, hard science, together with consciousness research. Quite amazing synthesis. And you know, I think that's where we are going in the future. But you know, these transitions take a very long time.
Well, and as
you know, the movement from the geocentric system of Ptolemy to the heliocentric system of Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler took 100 years, and the resistance was not just from the church; it was from the scientific circles. So these are paradigm shifts that you know, take a long time.
And you would say almost all modern science is still stuck at that level of Newtonian classical physics, would you not? And only in this consciousness world and in some of the particle physics, are they moving out of that paradigm, or where would you say the sciences are most advanced in this?
Where, you know, there are developments in other disciplines. There is amazing work of Rupert Sheldrake, who does something like this in biology. New Science of Life and a series of other books. And he has these ongoing debates with Richard Dawkins, who's an ultra, you know, mechanistic materialist. And Rupert brings really a lot of fresh air. He wrote a book which was a response to Dawkins's book, The God Fallacy. Rupert wrote a book which was called The Science Fallacy, and it was now published in United States with a new name, which is called now Science Set Free. Totally different thinking in biology, very, very progressive thinking. So it doesn't have to be just physics and consciousness research. You know, there are developments in other disciplines, but still predominantly it's still old type of thinking.
Right. Okay.
You have this, we had again a whole module talking about the paradigm shift. We talked about Thomas Kuhn, the structure of scientific revolutions, where he talked about the power of what we call paradigm, you know, the certain set of basic metaphysical assumptions and beliefs that the academic community holds for a certain period of time. And then this comes together with what Alfred Korzybski and Gregory Basin called confusion of map and territory. That they not only subscribe, you know, very, very firmly to the paradigms, but they don't see it as some kind of a tentative, formulation of the perspective on the world. The best possible way that we can organize our present knowledge, they see it as the final, definitive description of reality itself, the confusion of the map of the territory. The scientific paradigm is like a map, but it's not the territory. And so in the history of science, many major paradigm shifts. And what we have seen, like in the first 3 decades of the 20th century, that the physicists had to go through real conceptual cataclysm. They had to go from Newton to Einstein and then to quantum physics. And I think what is happening now, that we are developing a new understanding of the human psyche and of consciousness that in a way is going to be compatible and complementary to the new understanding of the material world that already happened in physics. So we have now psychiatry still in the 17th century and quantum relativistic physics already in the 21st.
Yes. Well, thank you.
So Amit Goswami and Erwin Laszlo, those would be 2 people that I would really recommend, who seem to be on the cutting edge of this kind of thinking.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to our next written question, which is from Giorgio. And Giorgio asks, Dear Dr. Grof, thanks again for this course. Do you think the planet level of consciousness is growing higher in these recent years compared to past decades? In the 70s or 80s, the awakening of consciousness was a matter for a few, while today is more of a mass phenomenon. Books, movements, spiritual teachers. Are you optimistic about the future?
Well, I can see actually both. I can see one trend where things are increasingly worse. And then I'm also in contact with a lot of the new developments of, consciousness research and new type of thinking that's, definitely very progressive. But I think it's becoming a battlefield now. What recently happened in the United States certainly doesn't seem like we are, moving to a higher level of consciousness evolution. But fortunately, it's not, the predominant trend. There's equally strong consciousness movement, people who are doing a lot of work on themselves, believe that the way to change the planet is we start from ourselves. It's not that everything's okay with us and the axis of evil is somewhere outside. And start changing the world by beginning from ourselves and influencing whatever our radius is. And if enough of us are doing it, I think things can change in the positive way. The major problem is that there's fallout from this sort of self-destructive trajectory, which is not very reversible, which is like the pollution that is happening, the industrial pollution of the air and the water and the soil. The oceans are big, but not that big. I mean, what is being sort of sent into the ocean and into the air is not a process that's very reversible. There was a small example was with DDT, which was an insecticide that was supposed to exterminate the Anopheles mosquito and help with yellow fever and so on. It was rewarded with a Nobel Prize. And then it turned out that nature cannot disintegrate that substance or whatever, all these hundreds of thousands of tons that were produced were dumped into the ocean. And then it turned out that there is a process when the concentration increases, because it's soluble in fat. And so it goes from the plankton to the small fish and to the larger fish. and then it goes into the cormorants and the birds and so on. And it reached the level that it started interfering with creating eggs in birds, and it was found in the penguins in the Nordic areas, and it was found in mother's milk, and it's a nightmare that is here to stay, you know. So sort of act a little like a sorcerer's apprentice, or you know, Dr. Frankenstein. Relying on technology and not quite knowing all the possible negative effects that might come in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go next to Shanti Lily.
Hi, Stan.
Hi.
Hi. I have a brief comment and then a different question. And comment is, I just want to thank you so much for, you helped me so much about my 2-month spiritual emergency when you compared it to St. Francis, when you, you know, acknowledged the miracles that happened within it. And, you know, you gave me praise in an area where there was shame. So I really love the way you honored my spiritual emergency. Coming from you, it means so much. I just had to say that first. Thank you.
Thank you for telling me.
Yes. Thanks so much. And my question actually is about cannabis. I wonder what I'm smoking it. Can that be used for holotropic purposes in any way? And if so, how?
I presume you're talking about cannabis, yeah?
Cannabis, about marijuana?
Yeah.
Smoking it, and can that be used for spiritual or psychospiritual? Or?
There are very, very different samples of marijuana. You know, there are many cannabinoids these days. Some of them just simply influence pain, which are very great for controlling pain, but they don't change consciousness very much. And on the other side of the spectrum are very powerful samples that are, you know, as powerful as any psychedelic session that I have ever seen. You know, this certainly cannabis can be used for medication. Rick Doblin, who is the president of the MAPS, which is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, he brought marijuana as a medication for PTSD people, for people post-traumatic stress syndrome, and he brought also MDMA, you know, ecstasy, as the treatment for post-traumatic syndrome. So, you know, marijuana can be extremely useful. It was until 1936 or 38. It was part of the pharmacopoeia. It was used for epilepsy, for menstrual pain. It was used for cancer patients as a very unique medication because it has 4 properties that no other substances have. You know, it's a analgesic, and it's sedative, and it's hypnotic, and appetite stimulating. So there are, you know, powerful healing properties of cannabis depending on which kind of cannabinol you're using, and some of them, you know, really come close to psychedelic sessions with other major psychedelics.
About that use for it, not the medicinal, but the holotropic uses that you just mentioned. You know, how do you use it holotropically?
I think it's not as effective as something like LSD or psilocybin would be, because that whole effect is kind of shifted to the positive side. Whereas in like LSD or psilocybin, if you are dealing with painful material, it really confronts you with it, and you have to go to the depths of it to work it through. Whereas marijuana, it's more kind of a benign. It does not quite confront you with some of the difficult emotions.
It's not, might it be good for imagination or other holotropic, uses? Would you?
For spiritual purposes, I mean, there have been groups, certain groups of Sufis who use it as a sacrament, certain Rastafarians in Jamaica, the old Scythians, and many of the Brahmins and yogis in India are using different preparations from hemp, charas, ganja, bhang. Those are all preparations. They're used for spiritual purposes.
That's good to know.
And more than the therapeutic, probably used for spiritual and ritual activities.
Yes, and in the spiritual and ritual activities, what would you do after you ingest the substance to have the spiritual kind of experiences with it?
Well, you just fully experience what is coming up. It basically provides access to the unconscious material, things that are normally buried, but still having some kind of a negative influence on us. They can surface into conscious awareness for processing. We can free ourselves from that. It also helps to play music. Music has all kinds of interesting properties that support this healing process. So, so just be in some kind of a safe, comfortable place. Hopefully, having somebody to hold your kite string, be there for you. And then you just be there in the present moment and experience fully what is coming and find some expression for it. It could be very liberating, very freeing kind of an experience.
That's wonderful. And the music should have no lyrics. Is that correct?
Should have
no lyrics, no words to them, just music with no words?
Yes. When we do it, for example, in the breathwork or in psychedelic sessions, we stay away from songs where people would focus on the meaning. You see, it becomes a cognitive kind of experience. They're trying to listen and understand what's being sung about. We use human voices. We use them in languages that people don't understand, so that it's more like a musical instrument rather than something that communicates meaning.
Sounds good. Well, gosh, this whole course has been just fabulous. Can't say enough about it, so I won't even try. But it's been fabulous for so many people and me, and I appreciate it, this course, so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shanti, so much. Thanks for coming on live too. All right, we'll go to our next written question, and then we'll go to, I think it's Nomi, and that may be the last question we can take today. We'll see how it goes, but let's go to someone anonymous, sent this in anonymously, and asks, can you describe several ways in which your ideas about God or a supreme being have changed as a result of your work? Do you envision it as an inner experience, a divine force within, an energetic force in the universe at large, or some combination?
Okay, well, if we go back, you know, I was brought as an atheist. My parents met in a small Czech town, and when they fell in love and wanted to get married, there was a problem because my mother was from a strictly Catholic family. My father's family didn't have any church affiliation, and the local church refused to marry my father because he was a pagan. And so there was big commotion, and seemed like marriage wouldn't happen at all until my grandparents from my mother's side found a brilliant solution, which was, of course, a major financial donation to the church. And then they were willing to relax their standard and, you know, marry a pagan. And my parents got so kind of upset by this whole situation that they decided not to commit me or my brother to any religion, and that we should make our own choice when we come of age. And then from this kind of a background, I went to the medical school. You know, at the time when we had a Marxist regime, we were controlled by the Soviet Union. So really materialistic education that certainly doesn't cultivate any mystical awareness. And so for me, it was my psychedelic experience and those that followed that really opened me to mysticism. Okay? But I distinguish very, very sharply organized religion and spirituality. Those are, for me, two different things. You could be spiritual without being religious. It's something that has to do with your being in the world, your relationship with the cosmos. This can happen in your body. This can happen in nature. And, you know, religion, organized religion, is a group activity that requires a special place, special rituals. And there's a very different concept of God there. For me, it is the mystical kind of spirituality when you find divinity in the world and you find divinity within yourself, whereas in many organized religion, God is seen as something that's sort of out there that you can reach only through mediation of some hierarchies, and you know, there's a tendency to control behavior in a way that it's not always very spiritual, and organized religions get involved in a lot of secular things and power, possessions, and very frequently unite a group of people who are willing to see it the same way and worship in the same way, but also divides the world by setting it against another group, you know, Christians and pagans and Muslims and infidels and Jews and Goyim and so on. So the kind of spirituality that's coming out of this work with holotropic states first discovers a certain realm which Jung called archetypal, where you can encounter deities that have specific form and specific function and create specific effects, you know, specific reactions. But then beyond it, there is a realm where there are no forms. The absolute for me has no form. It's actually something that generates all the archetypal form, the deity that are worshipped in different cultures. You know, for me there are deities. There are these archetypal forms, archetypal beings, but then there is a certain source out of which all these different archetypal forms emerge. And I have also experiences beyond it, which is something that's called void, a kind of a cosmic abyss, kind of a darkness, nothingness, but nothingness that seems to be also plenum, you know, this nothingness where nothing is missing. There's nothing in a concrete form, but everything seems to exist in a potential form. This is like a realm out of which existence emerges. So for me, it's this void out of which existence comes, and the source which doesn't have any form. It's sort of all containing, and then the realm of the religions, the gods, and so on. Those are manifestations of this abstract, absolute source. I don't know if I communicated it properly, but I came a long way, from being an atheist to having a kind of a mystical worldview. I see spirituality as a really important dimension in our psyche and also in the universal scheme of things. I believe that spiritual quest is a very legitimate activity, and that religion comes from an amazing source, in spite of the fact that in history, religions got distorted in many different ways, and they frequently deviated very, very far from the source from which they came. But there's a core out of which is the inspiration for spirituality came.
Stan, I just wanted to reflect to you. A comment came in, and I think it's from the same anonymous person that said, "Beautifully expressed." Thank you. So our next question comes from Nomi. Welcome.
Yes, hello. Thank you
Hi.
so much. Hi, Stan.
Hi.
I have a question about, I'm a mother since 8 months of 2 twin boys.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, and my process has been very, very dense since also giving birth. And as I started a lot working with plants and with LSD and all holotropics states, but now I'm really worried. I don't really do much because of the milk. Do you know anything what would be possible to do? I know I have in September I have an appointment with Letta and in Lucerne in Switzerland, where we met also once. But yeah, I was thinking about MDMA or LSD or even cannabis is something.
How old is your child?
8 months.
So you're nursing still, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be on the safe side and use something at this point without substances, do the holotropic breath work. There are no indication that LSD per se is toxic. It's actually quite safe, but the question is about the quality of what you are getting. Stanley Krippner once analyzed the street samples and found 18 different substances other than LSD in what was supposed to be LSD, including amphetamines and so on. So I would be on the safe side if I were you. And wait a little.
Yes. Okay, but actually also like psilocybin, it's not toxic, so it wouldn't be a problem if it's.
Well, we asked, Don Jose was an old shaman, Huichol shaman, and this was a peyote culture. And somebody in the group asked him, Don Jose, when do the Huichols start taking peyote? He says, when they get teeth and before they get it from the mother's milk. So they had different perspective. besides this, the possibility that some things, there could be some problem. Also, something can happen at any time, and it's not worth blaming yourself. Something happens that you would be connecting it to the fact that you have taken the substance.
Mm-hmm.
This would be my advice.
Yeah. Do you know about the cultures who work with ayahuasca? They work with ayahuasca? Do they work with the mothers also? Or I know that in pregnancy they work also.
Well, as I'm saying, the native cultures, they use the plants very, very early.
Mm-hmm.
The example of the Huichol Indians and the ayahuasca is the same.
Yeah.
You have to make the decision, yourself.
Yeah. I just want to know if there's some studies or some, yeah.
To know what your source is, and also you can also interrupt the nursing for a certain period.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much.
I shouldn't be given any advice of this kind anyway.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nomi. We appreciate you coming on.
You were sort of saying that we are coming to the end.
Yes, we are.
There is something that I wanted to do.
Please go ahead.
I wanted to invite Brigitte to come there, my wife, to say hello. And I wanted to thank her because of the incredible support that I got for all these months when I was working on the teleseminar, and a lot of the time that I spent on it was at the expense of the time that we normally spend together, and so I just wanted to express my gratitude. And
well, I wanted to thank you all for taking that course, and I'm very happy, and I very happily supported that course to happen, because I think Stan has such wonderful wisdom and knowledge to share with the world, and this is really important. And I hope that you all got really good information for your inner journey, and I hope that hopefully we will meet some of you in Prague and at the breathwork.
We haven't talked about Prague yet.
He will. Hopefully we'll meet you soon. So have good journeys. Bye.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Brigitte.
And thank you, Sherry, so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, that was so lovely, Stan. Thank you.
So Brigitte mentioned Prague. So 25 years ago, I was able to bring transpersonal psychology to Prague. We had a big international transpersonal conference there. And now in September, the last week of September, there will be another international transpersonal conference in Prague. It's quite amazing cast. Actually, the people whom I mentioned, Amit Goswami will be there, Erwin Laszlo will be there, Peter Russell, Brother David Steindl-Rast, quite a few people from both the transpersonal circles and the hard science that sort of creates a bridge to consciousness research. We will be doing a large pre-conference breathwork, post-conference breathwork, and after the conference, Rick Tarnas and I will be doing a 2-day seminar on archetypal astrology and how to use it in self-exploration and therapy. So it's going to be a very, very rich program in Prague. And, I think Prague is a very beautiful, beautiful city. I don't think I'm chauvinistic. I think a lot of people see it the same way. And it was very, very neglected during the communist era, but now it's really beautifully restored. It's a great city with a long history. So, if you have any more questions, we can do that.
Well, actually, the big question that I have for you, Stan, that I think everyone is waiting to hear about is how, and you mentioned Prague, and I'm wondering if there are other opportunities, and what are the other ways that everyone on the call and in the course can stay in touch with you going forward?
Well, I gave Marco today, I gave him the list of my books where people can find something that you might be interested in going deeper into than we did in this telecourse. Also my website, when there's quite a few articles that you can download, quite a few interviews. There's an access to kind of transpersonal photo gallery. Then Rick and I have been now again talking to the Shift Network people that will do one telecourse that will be specifically on archetypal astrology and its use in self-exploration and therapy, because I have alluded so many times to it, and Rick actually made guest appearance, and I think we had for the deepening learning, we had that discussion, 1 hour discussion that we did about how we use the archetypal astrology. So that would be another opportunity. I don't actually have in the near future, I don't have any large events. We just came back from Scandinavia, from Stockholm, and I was before in Paris, and so in the near future I don't have anything comparable. I'm thinking about doing some writing. So those are, those would be the things that I can think about. Otherwise, this movement of holotropic breathwork is now all over the world. They actually brought it even to China, together with transpersonal psychology. We brought it to Israel, and there are many countries in Europe, including the former Eastern European countries that really didn't have access to these kinds of activities. It's now training in Croatia, in Slovenia, in Ukraine, in Russia, Spain, England, then Australia. I mentioned Tasmania earlier. So there are quite a few opportunities for those of you who would like to get involved in some kind of inner self-exploration with people who are trained to accompany you through these kinds of experiences.
Great, thank you so much, Stan. I would like to take a moment right now just to thank you so much, Stan, for just being who you are and your life work, and just being with us and so present, and just really appreciate you. And I'd also like to thank everyone who's been in the course with us for the deep, insightful, thoughtful questions, and for coming to our sessions and being here, listening to the recordings. We just really appreciate each and every one of you, and you've helped to make it such a rich course. So thank you so very much. And just before I turn it back to Stan to just wrap things up and say goodbye, you will be receiving a completion email from us that will include a completion survey to give you an opportunity to give your very valuable and much appreciated feedback about the course. And in appreciation for taking the time out of your schedule to fill out the survey, you are also going to receive a special thank you gift. And what it is, so it's a special bonus recording. It's an hour-long video discussion with Albert Hofmann and Stan. So please make sure that you take a few minutes to complete the survey and accept that bonus from us. And I know that if you're on this course, I'm sure you'll enjoy it very much. And finally, I'd like to just read, there was a note of appreciation that came in, and I'd like to just read that before I turn it back to you, Stan. So it says, "Dear Dr. Stan, I'm sorry to not be present at the last class. I will be traveling to join Jean Houston in Ashland, Oregon. Thank you so much for this extraordinary course, for sharing your experiences, your vast knowledge, and the wisdom you've offered with such kindness and love. I went to Spain to the holotropic breathwork with Tav. The experience was extraordinary. I received messages from the 3 wise shamans that all I needed for my back was to breathe and they would take care of my body. This initiated a process that saw 2 more shifts and rotation of my vertebrae in my spine, culminating to a final one that occurred last Friday. I followed the wisdom of the 3 shamans and allowed them to take care of my body. They did it so well that yesterday I was able to trampoline with my grandchildren and to dance too. Thank you again to you and your wonderful Spanish team, who are incredibly kind, professional, and loving people. With immense gratitude, Adriana." Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Stan, I'll turn it back to you to close us out.
Well, I just would like to repeat what you said. The tremendous appreciation for those of you who have taken this journey, this Psychonaut Marathon. Obviously, without you, it wouldn't have happened at all. I also would like to express my gratitude to Shift Network, not just for these 2 teleseminars that I did through the organization, but also all the other things that you are doing, really, really raising consciousness in the world. So I feel also tremendous appreciation for people who, as I mentioned before, who decided to change the world in such a way that they start from themselves and then continue in their immediate environment. That's what have been described as thinking globally and acting locally. So I really very much appreciate your participation in this, and all those quite amazing questions that many of you were asking, showing that you are really on the journey already. And so I hope that what we did is going to be an inspiration for those who haven't started this journey of self-exploration, that also was useful information for those of you who are already on the path. And as Brigitte said, I hope we'll connect again sometime, somewhere in the near future. And special thanks to Sherry for a very sunny Jupiterian kind of a presence that she brought to this telecourse. It's really wonderful. It's been wonderful to work with her. And I hope that we connect again in some future teleseminars. So thank you again. And please let me know which part of this telecourse you appreciated and where you would like to have something done differently, so that we can use it as directives for the future events. So thanks again.